It's now time for the Pony Cake Sports Podcast with your hosts, Josh Stevens, Tim Thompson, and Tom Schultz. Woo!
Hey there, everybody. We are back with another episode, and as always, I'm joined with Tim and Tom. Gentlemen, how we doing?
Great. Tim's about to pass out.
So hot. I get that it's September, but oh my God.
You know what's comical is that every time it's wintertime, he has to bring a heater down here because it's too cold down here, and now it's too hot down here.
Why can't you just get like normal room temperature house?
I'm wearing a hoodie. I feel great. I don't know why you're sweating over there.
I'm
probably getting sick, too.
I'm going to take my pants off during this show. Just throwing that out there.
We are going to give you guys our must-starts of the week this week for, obviously, fantasy football, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, and the tight end position. Let's go ahead and start off.
No kickers?
No kickers, not this week. But if I was starting a kicker, Harrison Butker.
Shut up, Josh.
Just saying.
You should start him every week.
Every week.
He's on the best offense in football.
Exactly. Let's go ahead and start off with quarterback. Who you guys got?
My first one is the Red Rifle. Andy Dalton, $5,400 on DraftKings. Extremely cheap. Solid value, especially for cash games this week. Right now, Vegas thinks that game's going to be a shootout. Going to Atlanta, playing in the Dome. Atlanta really can't stop anyone, so they're expecting the Cincinnati Bengals to be able to score a bunch of points. For them to score a bunch of points, that normally means the quarterback has a good day. I think that's going to be the case with Andy Dalton this week, with both starting safeties now out, starting inside backer now out. Just teams have been able to attack the middle of the field. Running backs, tight ends, everything for the Bengals should be must-starts this week. Absolutely love Andy Dalton.
I'm going to go ahead and attach on to that because Andy Dalton was one of mine as well. Last week they gave up 44.4 points to Drew Brees, to passing attempts. I believe somebody else probably threw a pass attempt in there because Drew Brees scored 40.5 points in fantasy-wise in PPR leagues. But the week before, they gave up 27.6 to Cam Newton, 3 touchdowns in each of those games. Obviously, that game with Drew Brees was in overtime. But with Andy Dalton, I do like the fact that they are facing the Atlanta Falcons with that no help in the secondary. Yep. Pretty much nobody. So it's going to be very interesting because I'm actually going to attach one of the wide receivers to go along with a must-start as well. I know it's going to be upsetting, but...
right.
I'm going to go with Andy Dalton as well. I do like that. But because I'm going to give a different quarterback other than that, I'm going to go with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers this week is playing the San Francisco 49ers. And San Francisco just gave up 25.3 points to Patrick Mahomes. Gave up 24 to the Detroit Lions. Gave up 20 to the Minnesota Vikings. I see that trend continuing. With Phillip Rivers, I just like Phillip Rivers this week. Mike Williams had his coming out party last week, 2 touchdowns. I think Keenan Allen gets back into the mix. The 49ers are hurting overall. I think it's going to be a big day for Mr. Phillip Rivers.
I have 2. I'll leave the first one. I'll make it easy here. Drew Brees against the New York Giants. I think worst case scenario, this is a shootout. Where he's just going back and forth. Best case scenario, the Saints are dominant and the Giants just can't respond. But Drew Brees is he's found new life in my opinion with Alvin Kamara being so dominant. The game plan isn't, hey, how do we stop Drew Brees anymore? It's how do we stop Alvin Kamara? And that has freed Drew Brees up to do a lot of the things that he's really good at, which is just stepping back in the pocket, making a read, and finding Michael Thomas over and over and over and over again. Giants haven't been able to figure out their defense just yet, so give me one Drew Brees.
I'm going to go bargain shopping once again on daily. I'm going to go with Mr. Joe Flacco facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's, once again, $5,400. Extremely cheap for a quarterback. I get the idea of starting Joe Flacco. It's not sexy. It's not something you want to rely on. But in cash games this week, I think it makes a lot of sense. I don't think he's going to be super high owned. Should get some nice positive game flow in this game. And last 8 games for the Ravens, they've been able to score points, 32 points per game. That's a lot more than we're normally used to seeing from the Baltimore Ravens. I like the weapons they have. And right now, the Pittsburgh Steelers really can't stop anything on the defensive side of the football. They have one of the worst secondaries in football. And what are the Steelers known for doing when they're at home? They're known for scoring points. So there's a chance this game could be a shootout. Vegas right now projecting 51 total points in this game, so there should be tons of touchdowns scored in this one. I think Joe Flacco is a sneaky play.
Your second quarterback.
I hate the Joe Flacco pick. Sorry, Tom. I despise it.
Why?
I just don't think, especially on the road, Joe Flacco isn't terribly over impressive on the road to begin with. Even when at home, he kind of averages around that like 285 mark and a couple touchdowns and a pick. I just don't think this is the type of game where he's going to be able to go out there and overperform and warrant that type of start. I get that he's cheap. I understand that, but it's just not someone that I'd be looking at personally. My second quarterback, Tom's going to hate me even more after just tearing him down with that pick, but it's going to be Deshaun Watson. I think he finally is able to go out there and do what people have expected of him, which made him, a 4th-round draft pick in most leagues, sometimes even a 3rd-round draft pick. This is going to be the week that he shows out. Goes into Indianapolis. Listen, Indianapolis is much improved, but what Watson can bring to the table is the Colts' kryptonite, in my personal opinion. He's going to get the ball downfield, look for Hopkins and Fuller potentially have a touchdown, and look for Watson to have a rushing touchdown as well.
Let's go ahead and move on to the running back position. What are you guys liking at running back this week?
My play of the week is going to be Mr. Melvin Gordon. Right now, $8,300 on DraftKings. It's pretty expensive for a running back this week, but he's behind the big two, Gurley and Kamara. Both of those two have been exceptional this year, especially in full-point PPR leagues. But I really think Melvin Gordon's going to give you a little bit of value this week, along with give you the potential of being the number 1 running back in fantasy football. I think game flow is going to work great for the Chargers in this game. I think the Niners might be in a little bit of a reality check. This team might give up. They just lost their starting quarterback. C.J. Beathard is coming in, and I don't expect him to do much. I think the Chargers defense and Melvin Gordon have a big game this week. I think he's a lock for 20 rushing attempts finally this year. He hasn't done that yet, and potential for 2+ touchdowns.
I'm going to start with my bargain hunter play. You mentioned that you believe the Red Rocket, Andy Dalton's going to have himself a big game. And I think in doing so, one, Giovanni Bernard at the Atlanta Falcons, big-time show-out performance from him. I expect him to catch the ball between 5 and 7 times, to get between 15 and 18 rushes. He's going to have himself a day against an Atlanta defense that Tom alluded to earlier, super banged up, very injured. And Gio Bernard, this is his thing. He uses his size, his speed to his advantage. He's going to be able to take advantage of that Atlanta team, even on the road, even if the Bengals don't win. Look for Gio Bernard to have a big day.
Yeah, I don't disagree with either one of those. They make total sense. The one play that I do like, especially in DraftKings, he's $4,100. Aaron Jones for the Green Bay Packers. I think it's a sneaky play playing the Buffalo Bills. You got to remember they did really shut down that Minnesota rushing game, but it also had to do with the fact where Minnesota had to air the ball out. They only ran the ball 4 times. But you got to look at the other 2 games. The Chargers ran the ball against them 21 times. Baltimore Ravens ran the ball against them 24 times. 3 touchdowns and 1 touchdown. Gave up 43 points to running backs week 2 and 31.5 points to running backs in week 1. And they still gave up almost 20 points to running backs in week 3. So I still think there's tremendous value with Aaron Jones, especially coming back from his second game from his suspension. I think they're going to try to get him involved. I know we talked about a previous episode where he was on the field for the least amount of snaps out of those running backs, but I think that also had to do with the fact that they were down and they had to pass the ball a lot, and he's not a quote-unquote pass blocker. I think they're going to try to establish the run with Aaron Rodgers still hurting, and I think we're going to see a lot of Aaron Jones this week, and hopefully this is not like my Kenyon Drake pick last week, because Kenyon Drake pick was a bust. So I'm going with Aaron Jones with my first running back.
I think between Jamal and Aaron, I think one of them have a very big day this week. You're kind of rolling the dice. I think Jamal looked better last week. I think he was averaging over 5 yards per carry. But, yeah, like you said, the game flow just didn't work for them. It should be a better situation this week, and there should be more clarity shined upon this situation to see what's really going on in Green Bay.
I hate it. I mean, I just don't get how you're going to put any faith into one Aaron Jones. He came out last week. I mean, more to your point, the Packers offense primarily just runs through Rodgers, not through the running backs. Even when they do, Jamal Williams has had, moderate success. I just don't see, especially with the injuries that they've suffered on the defensive side of the ball. They got a linebacker in concussion protocol. They got their number one rush stopper in Wilkerson out for the entire year. It seems like the Packers are going to be more into shootouts here for the rest of the year than running backs taking over the game. And what I saw from Aaron Jones last week, he looked strong in his runs, but I just don't think that it's something that the Packers are going to be able to set on.
We'll see.
Jones and Williams, I will have each one of them in a big tournament lineup, one of the big GPPs for the Millionaire Maker. I think both of them. I think one of them's going to hit this week, and I think it's going to be big. I think both of them will have a low ownership. My second running back, this is solely based on Devontae Freeman being out. It's a guy I went with last week, Tevin Coleman. Still cheap on DraftKings, $5,900. It's extremely cheap for a guy who's going to get 20-plus touches. That's what you want for your fantasy running backs. Coleman disappointed last week, but he still did double his overall value. I think there's a chance this week that he triples it, which that's exactly what you want in cash games. Good news, Coleman, he's going to get the touches if Freeman's out. Last few seasons, he has struggled against the New Orleans Saints like he did last week. I think he's got a good chance to have a good game this week against the Cincinnati Bengals, who just gave up 230 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns to the Carolina Panthers. Expect Coleman to be a clear-cut number one running back this week.
I like that pick, Tom. I'm going to go to a guy, again, kind of, he's probably a little bit cheaper. Josh mentioned him earlier in a negative connotation, but you got to look at last week, the New England Patriots led a team who hadn't rushed for over 100 yards in 4 or 5 years, rushed for over 100 yards with a rookie running back. Kenyon Drake goes out there in New England, and he has himself a day. At least 80, 90 yards and a touchdown. Makes you get value for what he's worth there in the weekly leagues.
Well, I hate the Kenyon Drake pick. Basically, I just have to give you shit for giving shit for my pick. But
don't make bad picks.
The Coleman pick, Tom, I do like that. It'd be very interesting to see what Devonta Freeman would be doing if healthy. So yeah. I think that'd be a very interesting contrast, but I do like that pick as well. My second pick is going to be running back Carlos Hyde. I think week in, week out, he is a must start.
Sneaky boy.
They are playing the Oakland Raiders, who did just shut out Kenyon Drake, 11 rushes for 15 yards for the Miami Dolphins overall. But if you look at the games before that, the Denver Broncos, they gave up 24 points to running backs, and then the Rams, they gave up 28 points to running backs. Carlos Hyde with new quarterback, Mr. Mayfield, I think we're going to see him run the ball quite a bit still. It's going to be very interesting to see if we see him top 100 yards, but I think he's good for at least a touchdown. Plus, he's pretty cheap still in DraftKings.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot, Josh. This man has been scoring touchdowns, and you kind of have to have every Browns player have a little bit of an uptick in potential value since Baker Mayfield is now the quarterback. He's a guy that can stretch the field. He's a guy that can make plays, and he's not one that's super conservative like a Tyrod Taylor.
Tyrod.
I actually like it, Josh. I do think that there's another weapon on there that's going to benefit more than Carlos Hyde, but I do like I like the Hyde pick here.
Moving on to wide receiver, boys.
My first guy is going to be Sterling Shepard, $4,900 on DraftKings. I think he's one of the best values this week. I think he's going to be very highly owned, which means you pretty much have to play him or you're going to be in a tough situations. The Saints right now, they cannot cover wide receiver twos. You look at the last 3 weeks and what number 2 wide receivers have been able to do to this defense. Deshaun Jackson, 5 receptions, 146 yards, 2 scores. Antonio Callaway, 3 catches, 81 yards, and a touchdown. He should have had way more than that. But Tyrod is not a very good quarterback. And then Calvin Ridley last week had his coming out party, 146 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think Shepard's a must start in daily and all redraft platforms, especially if Evan Ingram misses some time. I don't think they have anyone that could answer Shepard this week.
I agree. I like that pick a lot, especially if Evan Ingram is out.
I'm gonna ride someone who he's gonna sit just out. He's not cheap, but he's gonna sit just outside of that, top tier wide receiver class, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. Especially with the Steelers playing at home, he's proven through the first 3 weeks that he is going to be the guy. He's gonna be elite. He can catch everything, and Big Ben loves going to him. I just don't see how you don't fall in love with someone of his caliber. I think another 7 receptions this past week, maybe even 8 receptions. No touchdown, but still in a PPR league, extremely, extremely valuable. I love Juju Smith-Schuster until he makes me look dumb.
Juju over 100 yards the last 3 games. That's pretty impressive.
What he's been able to do with Le'Veon Bell in that lineup has just been fantastic. And taking away Le'Veon Bell, all his reception and targets, all of that is going to Juju pretty much. And Juju, he's looking like he could be a bona fide number 1 receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I agree with that. Moving on, I have Tyler Boyd.
There you go.
Against the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons have given up again. We talked about Andy Dalton, but the wide receivers 46 points last week to the New Orleans Saints and 57 points to the Carolina Panthers the week before. I just think the writing's on the wall. You have to start Tyler Boyd. AJ Green obviously has to be in the consideration if he is playing this week. I haven't looked to see what his status is, but Tyler Boyd definitely. And if AJ Green's out, you have to consider John Ross as well.
Yeah, Josh Boyd was my other guy as well. Super cheap still on DraftKings, which is kind of crazy after 2 big performances in a row. Only 4,600. He's been one of the better, cheaper bargain options that you could really have in daily fantasy right now. Like you brought up with AJ Green, if he's off, that just makes his value even higher. I think Tyler Boyd's probably going to be owned in 90% of daily lineups. His value is just there, and you just put him in your lineup. It's going to be chalk this week, but I think he's going to have a major role for most of the season.
I'm going to go with Chris Hogan for my second wide receiver. Against Miami, I just feel like it's a ticking time bomb before the Patriots finally explode and do what we expect the Patriots to do. And this is the week against the division foe. I know that the Patriots have notoriously struggled, but this is different. If the Patriots start 1-3 with Tom Brady starting the first 4 games, there's going to be a lot of questions there. There's going to be a lot of things brought up, and I feel like a lot's going to be put on Chris Hogan's shoulders. I look for him to get a lot of targets and a lot of yards.
I saw someone post something saying Chris Hogan should change his nickname to Chick-fil-A because he's never open on Sundays. He has not been able to get open. He hasn't been able to do much this whole season. And it's kind of disappointing, especially with the crazy amount of attention that Rob Gronkowski has been facing every week. I've been dead wrong on Hogan. He had that big 2-touchdown game against the Jags, but hasn't done much else.
I think we'll see Hogan start doing a lot better once Julian Edelman comes back. So he cannot be the number 1 focus.
Yep.
Obviously, we've seen that. He's the number 3 guy on that team. My last combo of guys is the Minnesota Vikings wide receivers. Adam Thielen, who's just catching monstrous amount of balls, and Stephon Diggs. I know they're facing the Rams on Thursday night, but feel comfortable starting them this week with possibly both of the starting corners out.
Oh, yeah.
We talked about that before. Start your Vikings wide receivers.
I got one more, just real quick. Start Deshaun Jackson. Prince Amukamara probably going to be out. And Kyle Fuller, his whole game is to just run down the field, put his arms in the air, and never turn and get his head back. Deshaun Jackson's going to run right by that scrub. Watch it happen now. There will be a play of Deshaun Jackson catching a ball over his shoulder with Kyle Fuller trailing behind him for a touchdown. I will remind you all of that next week.
Moving on to tight end, I'm going to go first. I'm going to go with Trey Burton, Chicago Bears against Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers just gave up a whopping 22.9 points at tight ends this week, and the week before 30.1. They are the worst team in the league against tight ends. Trey Burton, I know he's only 9 catches on the year or something like that. But I think even with Trash Bisky, he gets it going against the Tampa Bay Bucks.
Picking up steam.
I wish Chris Connie was playing this game so he could possibly get stiff-armed again. But I think his ego is broken, so he's going to retire from the NFL. I like that pick a lot, Joshua. Very cheap and daily as well. I think if you're bargain shopping, he's one guy. The other guy I think that's good value is Eric Ebron. I think Doyle's going to be out this week. Only $3,600 on DraftKings. Tim, I stole your guy. I'm guessing. No? Okay. I think this game's going to be a shootout, Houston and Indy. We saw Eli Manning and the Giants. They were able to pass the football against the Texans. Their secondary isn't very good, and their linebackers are having issues covering people as well. I think Ebron had 11 targets last week. Good chance to get 5 to 10 targets, which that's exactly what you want. Dropped a touchdown as well. He's getting those red zone looks, which is extremely valuable.
The Texans just gave up a touchdown to the tight end for the Giants, Rhett Ellison.
Yeah, he's not good.
So
I am looking at a bad defense right now with no hope at this time because their coach kind of screwed them. And I'm looking at a young tight end with a young quarterback. David Njoku with Baker Mayfield.
I like it.
It's going to be a on the road, tough place to play. We talked about that prior. Obviously, big names down the field, but who do young quarterbacks fall in love with? Their safety net. David Njoku is an athlete. He is, has that Aaron Hernandez talent without the murdering, and could be fantastic for Baker Mayfield. Look for David Njoku, who has been somewhat of a disappointment this year so far, to have himself a game.
Without the murdering.
Yeah.
I'm going to be very interested to see how the Bears offense does with the secondary for the Bucks. I think at one point they had 4 rookies out there in the secondary.
Buccaneers got a Pee-wee football.
We'll see how that goes.
If the Bears don't have a good day offensively, there should be serious issues, and you should be very worried.
Joke's on you. There's already serious issues. These two teams combined, Bucks and Bears, with their 8 DBs, 2 corners, 2 safeties each, have 0 NFL players. That's how terrible their secondaries
Carlton Davis looked pretty good.
Yeah, Carlton Davis sucks.
He does not suck.
He looked
sucks.
You put Antonio Brown in check.
Auburn sucks, and so does Carlton Davis.
All right, that's all we have for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed. Tim's an idiot. We are Pony Keg Sports. You guys can follow us on Twitter at Pony Keg Sports, at Pony_Keg_Tom, at Fight Talk Tim. And you guys can always email us, ponykegsports@gmail.com. And until next time.
Peace.